And they get to the airport and they get on the plane and he shouts the B word, the word you can't say on an airplane.
Hey, it's Ben. So lately I've gotten more emails than usual asking about Tourette's as it relates to kids. That's a steady topic anyway, but lately it's been a standout. You'll recall last week I read an email from Matt from Arkansas asking for advice on raising a child who's been diagnosed. And thank you majorly if you wrote in and you offered yourself as a resource to Matt. Thank you. I forwarded your information on to him, so he should have that now. I know he appreciates it, and I definitely appreciate it on many levels. Even speaking as somebody who doesn't have kids, I used to be a kid, and I have parents who dealt with me. So, anyway, this episode kind of picks up on that theme in that spirit. We've got Jason Grant, he's got presence, if that makes sense. He just comes off like somebody to listen to when it comes to Tourette syndrome. And his ability to tell his story. He's got a pretty heavy story with Tourette's that at times is really funny and at times is, heavy. But the angle on kids with Tourette's, well, Jason has an excellent blog called My Tourette World. And there's an amazing feature on there, a series called The Children of Tourette, where Jason picks a youth with TS and writes about him or her the way that a journalist would profile any subject, but with a lot of warmth and empathy and understanding. And Jason, I gotta say, is a really, really good writer. He keeps it interesting. Speaking of, once this episode gets rolling and you get to know Jason as a person, you won't be able to pull yourself away. There's just so much here. An amazing first date story with his now wife. He's also working on a book. But we start out talking about tardive dyskinesia, which Jason also deals with. But let's let him introduce himself first.
Yeah, my name is Jason Grant, JASONGRANT, 45-year-old man with a son and a wife. My son's 7 years old. I live in Riverdale, New York. That's part of the Bronx, but it's not really the Bronx. It's more Westchester. I have tardive dyskinesia.
And what is that? I mean, could you explain what that is?
It's pretty well known by most people, but medication I've taken over the years had a dangerous side effect. And I people say, well, why did you take it so long? Why didn't you stop it earlier? And the explanation is complicated, but basically the medication was to help me with my depression and my mood and my temper. And I've put my faith in my doctor, and he felt that for the goals I had in my life, I would need to be on this medication. Mm-hmm. So eventually, about 5 or 6 years ago, I noticed tremors in my hands. I couldn't hold a cup without spilling it. Yeah. And I was really terrified, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was Parkinson's. And then when I found out that it was tardive dyskinesia, mm-hmm. I noticed that my hands were tremoring. And then I started to get tremors in my face. And then when I'd get nervous, my tongue would start to move really quickly. And that was the big way they diagnosed it for years. Is they tell you whenever you go for your visit to the therapist, they say, show me your tongue. And this time my tongue was wagging and I just couldn't stop it. And they said, yeah, it's Parkinsonian symptoms. It's tardive dyskinesia. So I'm grateful that I've been on it, because the truth is, if I had not been on this medication, I would not have been able to have found a wife and child, because I wouldn't have been the kind of person another woman would want to live with. And I'm difficult enough as it is to live with, but my wife saw something in me, and I'm grateful to God for that. And I know for a fact that if I didn't have to take this medication, I never would have been able to have that in my life.
Wow.
So I look at balance it out.
Wow.
Yes, I'm disabled. Yes, I can't hold a job, but I'm raising my son while my wife is at work, and I'm proud of it. And I was a paralegal for 12 years, and it got to the point where I was just so nervous and so wiped out by the pressure. I quit that, and I had gotten into an argument with someone on the phone, and I had cursed them out, and then they fired me 2 days, two or
Hmm.
3 days later, and rightfully so. They can't have that at a law firm.
But it was just the pressure of the situation that kind of got you to a breaking point.
The pressure of being in that industry. So I went to a reunion for my mother,
Yeah.
for my mother's friends, and one of her friends said, "I really liked your writing when you were younger. You should try that again." So I got back into writing, and the truth is, and I know it sounds like I'm bragging, and people say to me, when you say that, they say, "Yeah, you're a writer."
Hmm.
But I really am a good writer. My problem is I'd love to have a career as a writer. A, it doesn't pay that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And B, the way everybody needs it fast, I don't work as fast or as quickly as they need. I can't finish an article in a half hour. It takes me a little more time. So I'm doing this blog at my own pace, and I'm writing a book about my Tourette's also. I'm gonna try and get it published at Disability Publishing.
And so, I mean, do you find that writing to be kind of therapeutic for you? Does that kind of mellow you out or?
Yeah, it's very therapeutic, and it's because I think about what's been going on in my life, and I get a better angle on it. I remember for years, I blamed my parents, and especially my mother. I blamed her for making mistakes that she honestly did the best she could, and my father did the best he could,
Hmm.
and they it was a difficult time. It was difficult to handle, and very little was known about Tourette's,
Right. Yeah.
and I really blamed them for a lot. And my mother appeared to be very very gruff toward me, and every time I'd make a sound, it would seem like she's making a wince. And I was very angry at her like that for years. And then I read Front of the Class about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I don't know if you know what Front of the Class is.
Well, yeah. Explain what that is.
Yeah, it's a book by a gentleman who was a child with Tourette's, and he grew up and he became a principal in Georgia, and he became a really great teacher. And they made a movie with him, made a movie about his book called Front of the Class, and it was
Yeah.
starring Matthew Perry from Friends. And so I read the book, and it was fantastic. And he talks about how his father was really gruff with him, and he thought his father didn't love him. And when he grew up and he got older, his father said, "You know, I'm really proud of you, the way you've grown up." And he says, "Yeah, but you were always so gruff with me." He says, "I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at myself because I felt helpless. I couldn't help you. I didn't know what to do for you. I felt badly
Huh.
and I felt guilty. And it really made
Right.
sense to me. And that book really helped me clear some things up with my mother and my father. And my mother and I have a really good relationship now. My father and my mother, we have a very good relationship now. And I don't blame them for anything. They did the
Hmm.
best they could. But that's just a little bit about my background.
And so, reading a book like that, I mean, you were already a pronounced writer and interested in writing, but did that kind of kickstart things for you in terms of wanting to write about your disabilities or about Tourette's or?
No, I started writing about it from the beginning about 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Hmm.
What happened was I got married in 2008. We came back from the honeymoon. My wife got let go from her job. She took time off to have a baby. We had the baby, and about 2 years into Jake's life, she got a job from a very good, she got a very good offer for a job, and she took the job. And I was dad at home now, so I
Yeah.
started writing as a dad blogger. But I felt, for some reason, I felt more comfortable writing about myself in the Tourette's, and I would write small pieces. I wrote a piece about it's more of a scene on a train and subway, and I'm standing there, and it's my daily trip is on the subway, and people cursing me out and getting angry at me on the subway to my sounds and getting
Hmm.
annoyed, and it's really powerful. My wife read it and she wanted to cry, and No, I think, um, yeah, I mean, I really realized how good I was, and I wanted to contribute something to the discussion of Tourette's because it's like you said, it's therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really sort out my feelings, and yes, I don't get it out fast, but I do it on my own pace. And I've started about a year ago writing a proposal for a book that I'm going to do. I haven't been able to concentrate on it very much lately. I've just been not really good at concentrating, but I have been making my presence known online
Yeah.
with the Facebook site and the blog, and I'm keeping in touch with people on the Facebook groups. And I read these other people's story, and some of them I feel terrible for. Some of them I feel, oh wow, they're so brave. I mean, all these people have different stories, and they're all struggling, and I want to be a part of that discussion. So that's why I decided to do this in my free time, which basically I get whenever my son's in school or I'm on my own during the day or evening.
So
But
you're doing it a lot in a kind of you're telling a human story and you're kind of building community and finding community. Are you also doing it from an awareness standpoint or?
yeah, I mean, my blog and my Facebook site are all about awareness.
Yeah.
Um,
So could you talk about your blog and when you started that
yeah,
up and where people can find it?
yeah, I started my blog about 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I was taking a journalism class, and it was a class about writing for a blog, and I had to come up with a blog name. And so I came up with My Tourette World,
Hmm.
and I started it basically. I dropped the class because I wasn't into it. I stopped working on it, and then I came back to it about a year later, and I just really got into it gung ho, and I really enjoy it. And basically, it's all about awareness, and I'm trying to. It's always changing. It's always fluctuating. It's always being in development. I'm always adding new things to it, or
Yeah.
taking risks, or doing things differently. And one of the big things that I've done and that I'm really proud of is there's a feature on my blog. It's called Children of Tourette.
Yeah. It's great. I've been reading it. It's really great.
Thank you. It really feels good that when I get a response from the parents after it's been published, saying thank you, this is so wonderful, you've done a great thing, we love the way you write, or you've really made my family happy, you really made my son happy, or my daughter happy. And it's because I want, and there's another story on there also about myself with a particular pitcher for the Phillies
Hmm.
who's in the Hall of Fame, and how I had been disappointed that he wouldn't sign my autograph or respond to my letter when I
Right.
was a kid. And so I wrote this piece very recently also that explains why I do not do the children's Tourette. And it's, I just wanted to feel special. I just wanted someone who wasn't my family. I wanted someone to feel that I was special. And I had something in common with this guy, and he refused to contact me. He didn't get back to me for whatever his reason was. And so I figured, hey, these kids, they're having a hard time like I had a hard time, and they're good kids, and they have whatever troubles they have, whether it's socially or health wise or physically. And what I figured, they see themselves online. They're famous. People send them messages saying, "Oh, this is so wonderful, so proud of you," and it builds up their self esteem.
Yeah.
And it's something that's really special for me. It makes me feel really good about that.
Yeah. I mean, could you talk about any sort of highlight moments when you're writing the Children of Tourette series?
This month I did something different. Usually it's just one kid a month, but this month I got in touch with someone who had not triplets, but three sons in the UK in a town called Scunthorpe, and she has three sons, all with Tourette's and some of the other side disorders.
Hmm.
And I did one kid a week. And the second kid I have to finish, the third kid I have to finish today. I just have to publish it. I have to write it. I wrote the story, and then I just have to format the page and everything, and get that done.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's an interesting thing because I'm taking a look at. Yes, a lot of people know what it's like to have one child with Tourette's. That's difficult enough for a parent, difficult for the child. But what's it like for a family where there's three kids, and what's the family dynamic on that?
Right.
And how do the brothers interact? How do they support each other and don't support each other? And these are good kids, and the third kid I'm writing about is amazing. This kid for the third week, he's amazing. He's 9 years old, and he's so confident in himself, and he doesn't care what other people think of him, and so he's going to live his life. And
Yeah.
I'm just really impressed with this kid. I wish I had that attitude as a kid. And it
Yeah,
said
me
his
too.
mother raised him that way. And this is a family that lives in a small town in England. I forget the name of the overall county, but it's in a place called Scunthorpe.
Is this the series that's in Lincolnshire?
Lincolnshire, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And the mother started out with one kid, and she didn't know what to do. And she was really an amazing mother. There was no one in the town who even heard of Tourette's, and now her first son has Tourette's.
Yeah.
So she learns about it. She supports him. She does the hard labor of trying to find treatment for him or therapy or whatever she can do. And she's become an educate. She's in disability education now, I believe. I'm not quite sure what the industry she's in, but she's turned it into a career, and she knows a lot about Tourette's now. And so she has three kids.
Mm-hmm.
So after one, she had a little experience, and after the other, she was more prepared. And for the third one, she was even more prepared. And they give each other space, and they support each other. And these kids, they have senses of humor. They play jokes on each other.
Mm-hmm.
They it's funny, they when they get annoyed at each other, they start faking their Tourette sounds just to get the other one going. And you wouldn't think that's funny, but some kids, they just that's how brothers are anyway.
In that context, that's
brothers
pretty
brothers
funny. Yeah.
brothers 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 tease each other, and
Yeah.
they find ways to needle them, and they're just like they're normal kids.
Right.
And I just love writing about this thing. It's just really, really great.
So, how did you find these kids? Was it via different Facebook communities, or how did you come
Yeah,
across them?
well, I joined a couple of Facebook groups, and I would, if I'm interested in doing a story about someone, I send out a message to everyone saying, "Hello, all parents out there with Tourette, kids with Tourette's. If you want your child to be on this blog, to write a profile on my blog, you send me your email, and then I forward them questions, and they get the questions back, and I turn it into a story.
Right.
And I have developed my methods of doing it over time. At first, when I started, I just said, just tell me a little bit about your kid, and send a photo, and that was basically the first one. And over time, I developed a questionnaire, and if I find something interesting, I sent this family the questionnaire, but there wasn't enough in there about being triplets, about being three brothers. So I sent each brother and the parents separately a detailed questionnaire asking them questions geared toward their particular life. And so it's developing, and I feel like I'm growing as a writer. I feel like I'm growing as a person,
Sure. Yeah.
and I feel like I have I my wife and my son give me purpose. My wife and my son give me purpose,
Mm-hmm.
but I love helping other people too, and I've always been about helping other people and making people feel better. And I'm just so proud of myself, and I'm so proud of these kids that I'm writing about, and they're so brave. And it's funny. People say, "Oh, you're so brave,"
Yeah.
And it seems almost you don't want pity, but really these kids are just so much courage. I mean, a lot of these people, even the kids in the books that I've read other memoirs, Tourette memoirs, and these kids are so confident now. They don't want to be on medication because they know what their side effects are. So they're getting treatments in other ways that didn't exist when I was a kid, and they're gonna be just fine.
Yeah.
And I'm really impressed. I was invited to a gala at the Tourette Association in New York City about 2 or 3 months ago, and they had this kid standing up there, young kid, 16, 17 years old, and he's speaking to the crowd about his history with Tourette's. And he's just such a wonderful kid, and he's so well spoken, and you love this kid, and it's amazing. I it's a really great community. It's just really it's rewarding. I think the
Yeah.
word's rewarding.
Yeah. And when you're talking to these kids or you're corresponding with them,
I'm corresponding them over email.
over email, do their stories kind of, I guess kind of recalibrate the context of how you view your own Tourette's and kind of what you go through?
Yeah, well, it's different. It's different because now there's information out about it.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, there was very little information. I was diagnosed at 7. My mother diagnosed me.
Yeah.
She saw me doing a obsessive tick in the kitchen, and that's when she knew. She didn't like to talk about it anymore. It's very traumatic for her. She doesn't like to talk about it very much. But I've spoken to her about it more recently. But she diagnosed me, and she tried very hard to get me the help that I needed. And there wasn't a lot of knowledge, and there weren't laws on the books protecting me. There was no such thing as an IEP for
Yeah.
me in school, and there wasn't teachers weren't held to a higher standard.
Hmm.
I remember being in a class for the first time in 5th grade in public school for 1 year, and this kid says Jason has no friends. And the teacher, I remember, I'll never forget what she says. She says, "Yes, we know he has no friends, but you don't have to tell him that."
Oh God.
Yeah. So,
I
yeah.
mean,
So the
like,
teacher wouldn't get away with that these days.
no, not at all. And when you were a kid, I mean, did you have frequent sort of negative interactions with kids your age because of your Tourette's or tics?
I got along better with adults. I found I got along better with adults because the adults were more understanding, and I was very verbal, and I think I got along better with adults, and I had a hard time getting to know kids because I had the obsessive compulsive disorder, and I'm on the autism scale apparently.
Mm.
And so I think back to things I did as a child, and like, wow, I wish I hadn't done this differently, but I couldn't have because I was just a child and I didn't know what to do.
Right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a long time to get socialized and get to know people,
Yeah.
and it destroys your self confidence. I had a long time had no confidence in myself. I was really feeling down, and
Hmm.
the medication is a part of it. Therapy is a part of it. Being successful with the family is a part of it. My whole life is coming together, and it's really good. And the only thing I'm hoping now is I'm hoping I can get. I've applied for disability, so I'm waiting to hear for a hearing.
Have you heard of other people getting awarded disability
Yeah, I
yeah.
didn't even know this was a common thing, but I spoke to someone at a get together about a month or two ago,
Yeah.
and he said that yeah, he's on disability also, and it makes sense because when you if you're making sounds or you're nervous or you lose your temper, you can't hold down a job.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do? And when you have tardive dyskinesia like me, I mean, I can't I can't concentrate for long periods of time.
Hmm.
I don't I don't write quickly enough. My mind doesn't work quickly enough. I have a temper. I get frustrated sometimes.
Mm.
I don't have corporalia, but I have the barking
Yeah.
and the sound effects, and I have twitches and contortions when I'm walking. And so I can't hold a job and I need to support my family.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping they give it to me.
So how else do you try to manage your
Well,
tics?
my wife, how do I manage my tips?
Yeah, and
That,
I
that,
use manage in
yeah.
quotes, but how do you try to kind of negotiate that in your daily life?
Well, I, I, I think I just go ahead and do it.
Yeah,
Tell you the truth, I don't really hold back. A lot of kids, they hold back in public
I
and they
definitely
go
did.
home and
Yeah.
they bark. And in
Mm-hmm.
some situations, yes, I hold back even though I really want to, but that's never been a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a story. I read a lot about Tourette's online and I read stories. And I saw a story about this poor kid and his friend. It happened about 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, where they were saving up money for a year to go to a Civil War reenactment.
Huh.
And they get to the airport and they get on the plane and he shouts the B word,
Yeah. Yeah.
the word you
Mm-hmm.
can't say on an airplane, like Ben Stiller in Meet the Parents. You
Yeah.
can't say
Yeah.
that on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained to the stewardess and explained to the flight captain, I have Tourette's. I'm not a threat. I'm not in danger. And please, you'll have to forgive me. I can't. I need to get on this flight. And I said, yeah, but we'd love to, but the people on the plane are too afraid of what you said, and they're so rattled by it. We can't let you get on the plane. And they gave them a voucher for a new ticket. He said, well, can I get on the plane with that one? And we can't guarantee you. So I felt bad for them. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
I'm going on a plane about a couple months later with my family. And I get the urge to say it because I've been thinking about this kid's situation.
Hmm.
And I've never had corporalia. I've never shouted uh, curse words or anything like that. I mean, when I'm angry, I curse, but it's not really corporalia. But it, I didn't obsessively say words, and I got the urge to say it. And so I found a way to control it. And I read on that a lot of people control it. They morph the word. You know what I mean by morph?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
They distort it. But instead of saying the B word, I go, "Aba!" like that.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's how I keep, because every time I go on a plane now, I'm thinking about that kid. And I get the urge to say it, and I know I can't. So I morph it. And apparently a lot of other people do the same thing, and it's a good trick.
Yeah, that's something I've done with some of my tics and, some of my vocal tics and some of my physical tics where I kind of, I kind of move the target on them and I kind of act like I'm doing something else or I kind of play them into
Yeah.
something that might look a little bit more normal. And I'm trying to get better at just not masking things and just kind of being myself. But
Yeah.
obviously, there may be practical situations like the B word on a plane to where,
Yeah.
there might be a sort of necessity in the moment to
Yeah.
mask that or hide that
And my
yeah.
wife knows that I get these urges, and she doesn't say anything to me, but I know she's terrified that I'm going to say something and
Mm.
we'll get kicked off the plane, and I really don't want to do that. So I do the best I can.
So your wife, how early on did she know that you had Tourette syndrome?
It's funny because I had a hard time meeting women, and I didn't really, it wasn't really, I didn't go about it the right way, and I made mistakes, and I got therapy and help for that.
Yeah.
But I met her on Match.com,
Oh, nice.
and it didn't say anything about Tourette's.
Mm-hmm.
I'd already been doing JDate for about a year and a half, 2 years, and no progress.
Yeah.
And so I changed some of my preferences, and I met this nice woman who's a fashion designer, and
Oh,
we
cool.
went on a first date actually it was our anniversary a couple of weeks ago, January 6th, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And 2007, I'm sorry, January 6th, 2007.
Yeah.
And we met at this little coffee shop. And I didn't say anything about the Tourette's. I had a couple of twitches, a couple of sounds. I controlled it pretty well. But I didn't want to make the mistake of being upfront. Oh, I have Tourette's now, and just say it out loud. And so that was a strategy the doctor told me to take. Just don't say
Okay.
anything right away.
Yeah.
Just be yourself, and don't go there thinking you're gonna start a family. Go in there, just have fun, enjoy the company of this person that you're with, and don't think about anything else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I we left the coffee shop and we went our own ways. And before we left, I said, "Listen, I'd like to have a second date with you. I'd really like to have a second date with you." She said, "I'd like that," and we kissed on the cheek, and it was nice. And
Yeah. Yeah.
about an hour or two later, I called her just to say, "Listen, I had a really great time again, and I really enjoyed your company, and I'm looking forward to our date." And then it's a funny story, and I'm not going to tell you all the details because it makes me into a jackass. But I said something, I made an accusation with her that I shouldn't have accused her of,
Mm.
and and I said, "You know what? I don't want the second date." And she must have been, she just confused because we had such a good date. And she's telling me she went to work the next day and she's like, "I'm so confused. He was so nice and we were getting along. And I thought, well, this one might be special."
Yeah.
And the next day at work, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it. And all of a sudden, tears are coming down my eyes. It's like God made me cry or something.
Wow.
I'm crying and crying. And I realized I made a mistake. So I called her up and I said, "Listen, I'm really sorry for what I said. I wasn't thinking right. I wasn't, it has nothing to do with you. And please, can I have a second date?" And her attitude was, "Well, life's short." So she gave me a second chance. And thank God she gave me a
Wow.
second chance because I have a wife and kid now.
Oh man, it's amazing.
Yeah, she's a very wonderful woman. I'm not easy to live with. With the Tourette's and the ADD and the ADHD, and sometimes I make stupid jokes. And she's a great woman. And my son's fantastic. He's just really bright and he's special and he's 7 and he's really smart. And I'm just lucky she gave me a second chance.
So yeah, was it on that second date when you started to kind of explain things about yourself, or?
Yeah, well, I told her after the first date that, "Oh, I have Tourette syndrome," and I'm not going to go into it. I didn't really make a big deal about it. So she said she called a friend of hers and said that, well, he had some kind of a twitch. I didn't know what it was, but then he told me he had Tourette syndrome. So she apparently looked it up on WebMD
Huh.
and she read up on it and she said, "Oh, I could probably." I guess she felt to give it a chance. Why she just felt, I guess, why not have see something if it works if there's something small as a disability.
Mm.
And so she's really she's I remember when we went on a trip to my grandfather to see my grandfather in California, and we were at my grandfather's synagogue, and this little girl was sitting in front of my whole family. My mom's there, and my brother's there, and I'm there, and my fiance's there, and we're in the middle of prayers, and this girl is sitting in front of me, maybe 7 years old, 8 years old, starts imitating me, and her dad is egging her on,
Yeah.
and I didn't
Oh.
even know about it because the next thing I knew, my future wife, pokes him on the arm, on the shoulder, and says, you should know better than to make fun of someone with a disability. He can't control it."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, my hero."
Yeah, she sounds amazing. She really sounds
Yeah, she's
amazing.
really a great woman. She's stuck up for me, and she I don't know if she totally understands everything I'm going through, and I don't need her to, because sometimes you just don't understand, and sometimes you get frustrated with someone,
Hmm.
and you don't want to talk about it. But I'm very lucky, and I consider myself very lucky, and everything's working out for me, and I'm just really happy. And I get down on myself sometimes, and I obsess, and it drives her crazy. I guess you know probably know this. A lot of people with ADD
Hmm.
or obsessive compulsive. All that's going on in the world, is it the end of the world coming?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I read a lot of news. I'm a news junkie, and every 5 minutes I'm saying, or I'm like the reporter. I'm like, oh, look at what it says this time, and look at what it says this time. And she says, listen, I don't want to hear it. I'm trying to stick my head in the sand.
Right. Yeah.
You it annoys me. Why do you keep doing it? I said, I don't know. It's something I do. And she forgives me, but I know I annoy her, and it's okay. She can be annoyed with me, and because I know I'm a wonderful husband and
Yeah.
I'm a great
Yeah.
father, but sometimes you get frustrated, and I can't I can't get angry at her about that. I mean, I'm a good person, but I have my flaws, and she has her flaws, and other people have their flaws, and you just gotta move on.
It's funny when you said earlier that you would, occasionally make stupid jokes and that would become annoying. I do the same thing. I mean, I cannot control myself if something just really, really dumb pops up in my mind. I kind of just have to debut it for the world.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's some. I read about it. I think it is part of the disorder. I don't want to label everything I do as probably Tourette's because it might not be. But I read something about there's a thing called reporting that
yeah,
some
yeah.
people do, and that they repeat things they see or witness.
It's exactly
So
what I do. Yeah.
that might be it. But I don't want to say to my wife, "Oh, it's Tourette's," because everything's Tourette's, and then it seems like I'm making excuses for myself.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
So
There are a lot of things about myself, and I don't know if it's just my personality independent of anything, or maybe just kind of how I was conditioned and shaped when I was brought up, or if it's actually part of my Tourette's. But I do that. I mean, I repeat things. If someone says something in a funny way, I find myself repeating it in the exact same way. I do an impression of what's
yeah,
around
but
me.
I don't necessarily repeat what people say, but I read the headlines for outrageous things about the president
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
headlines for what's going on in North Korea, and it
right.
drives her up a freaking wall. And I just can't
Yeah.
find a way to not to stop doing that because she just wants to live her life and stick her head in the sand, and that's fine, and she's entitled.
Mm.
But I have a hard time controlling that, and she's still with me, so I'm grateful.
No, no, she gets an A+ from me. She sounds amazing.
Yeah, she's terrific.
So, in your offline, like just kind of in your direct world around you, do you meet other people who have Tourette's? Have you talked to people in person?
Yeah, I've tried to. For a while, I didn't do it growing up, and I only started when I lost my job
Hmm.
the last time, and that was about 6 years ago. Well, it was 2010 now. I started attending get-togethers from the Tourette Association,
Yeah,
and I met some people, and I found that I'm understanding myself better, and I understand my history a lot better, and I forgive myself for things, and I say, "Oh, is that what that was?"
yeah, yeah,
And it's amazing. And I haven't been doing it a lot. I hadn't been doing it a lot lately because a lot of these people that I was going to these get-togethers, they're like 10 years younger than me, and I feel sort of like the odd man out.
hmm.
And but I'm told myself that when they get back to scheduling these things, I'm going to go back and get to know more of them because it makes me feel better about myself, and I understand myself better, and it gives me stuff to write, and it gives me a new group of friends I can have. And so what if they're 10 years younger?
Yeah.
It's it's I've made a sincere effort to try to make myself a voice in the Tourette community, which is why I'm doing all this stuff on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean
And
that really makes me feel good hearing that, because that's kind of why I'm doing this. I was definitely in touch with the Tourette Association. It used to be called the Tourette Syndrome Association at the
yeah,
time,
I
and
actually went to one of the preliminary pitch sessions that with the advertising
really,
people, with the advertising agency that they use. They were trying to find better way to reach out
yeah,
and modernize. and someone had mentioned, well, if you have TSA, people
Yeah,
confuse it with the Traffic Safety Administration.
that's what I've always
So
thought. Yeah.
that's probably what happened there. But no, but I remember attending that, and I've gone to a couple of the comedy things in the city. There's
Hmm.
one woman who's part of the Tourette Association of New York. She's a comedian, and she works on MTV, and she has a couple of shows. She's a producer
Yeah,
and a
I'm aware of
writer.
her. Yeah,
Chelsea White,
Chelsea
and
White.
she's funny as hell. She's funny as hell, and so she arranges for the hard time comedians. I mean,
Hmm.
real comedians. I mean, she's a real comedian,
Yeah,
and she's funny, and she knows Jim Gaffigan, and she knows all of them, and she has these connections. So yeah, it's a good comedy thing, and it raises money. And so I got in touch with Tourette's Association because I wanted to contribute stories. I wanted to see if they would publish stories of mine, or if they wanted me to write for them. Because originally what I wanted to get a job with them because they're here in New York.
hmm,
Problem is they're in Bayside and I'm in the Bronx, and I have no way to get there because I don't drive a car.
yeah,
So that even if they were to give me a job, I wouldn't be able to go and do the job. So I just told them, listen, just want to contribute. I want to be to participate and become a voice. And they actually invited me over to their offices about 4 or 5 months ago to do a video that was going to be presented at the gala.
hmm,
And when that they had a change of plans and they didn't use the video, but they said, "Listen, come to our gala." So they were very welcoming, and they're very good people, and they want people to participate, and it's a great organization. And I'll tell you, I'm not able, I'm financially I can't bring in aid to the Tourette Association, but what I did do recently was I went on Amazon, and there's this thing, Amazon Smile, where if you change the link, the address from regular Amazon to smile.amazon,
hmm.
you can choose any charity you want,
Oh, nice.
and they donate a portion of your purchases to that organization. So that's what I do now.
That's
Every time
nice.
I buy
Yeah,
on Amazon, I go through Amazon Smile, and it's a small way. It's not a lot, but it's a small way to get that going. And
that's
I'm
really
just
cool. Yeah, I wasn't even
yeah
aware you could do that.
yeah that's a new thing. They started it about a year ago. And you can choose any charity you want, and it's fantastic.
That's really, really
And
cool.
no, because it's important. These people, this organization is out there trying to help as many people as they can. And there's kids who fall through the cracks, and I feel sorry for a lot of these kids. I mean, they get misdiagnosed first. A lot of
Yeah.
them get misdiagnosed as bipolar, and they go on drugs that are killing them. And then it's like, oh no, it's not bipolar. It's probably just Tourette syndrome.
Hmm.
And then the parents have to go through that, and they have to find out how to deal with their kid. And I've heard stories that are inspiring, and I've heard stories that are just downright sad and heartbreaking. And I've read a lot of these books, and it inspired me to write a book myself. So I'm in the process of writing. I'm in the long process. I've been just procrastinating, but
So,
I'm writing a proposal for a book on my Tourette's called "How I Tourette Head: How I Overcame Tourette Syndrome to Live a Happy Life as a Father and a husband."
and so an audience for that kind of book, would it be people who are who have Tourette's and are dealing with that themselves, or do you want it to be something that the general public can enjoy? Or
Well, I'm trying to figure out what my demographics going to be.
Mhm.
But I would think that my first idea for it is I would like it to be something the kind of book that when someone is told that they have Tourette syndrome, their doctor can say, "Here, take this book and read it.
Yeah,
You can have a good life." and because kids must be terrified that and parents must be terrified that, oh, how's my son, who's going to fall in love with my son or daughter, or who's gonna take care of my son or daughter.
Yeah.
And I just want to be an example for people that I overcame a lot. I overcame a heck of a lot. I went to a boarding school for 2 years in Connecticut, and I almost got killed there. And I've overcome so much that I want to be an inspiration for people.
Yeah.
And I just want them to know, no matter how painful it is, and no matter how dejected you feel, you can always have a good life. And it's just something you just have to make a decision. Am I going to go this road, or am I going to go that road? What road am I going to take?
Yeah.
And one of those things that I'm talking about in it is, do you have to go the route that I did? Saying, are you willing to risk not having a social life or a family life, and not take medication? And some people can do it without the medication, but I personally, it all depends on what you and your doctor say.
Right.
I mean, just because one person can get along without medication doesn't mean another person can. So you got to make a judgment for yourself. Are you going to be on medication and take the risk, or are you going to go without the medication and live your life and just try to be confident in yourself? And I didn't have that confidence. I needed the medication. So the medication really helped me through all this change. And that's something that I discuss in the book. And it's a personal decision. It's a very personal decision. It's between a patient and their doctor and their family. And there are better medications out there that are safer now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different world, and people have rights. Kids have rights. I write a chapter about what I talked to you about, blaming my family for my problems, and how it wasn't their fault, and they were doing the best they could. And I tell the story about reading the book by I forgot his name, in front of the class, and he was inspiring, and I learned a lot about myself from that. And I was able to call my mother. I called my mother and I said, "Listen, Mom," and I was crying. And I'm like, "Mom, listen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I blamed you for everything that went on in my life. I'm sorry I gave you such hell. And you weren't angry at me. You just didn't know how to help me. You felt hopeless and helpless. And I'm just so sorry for the way I treated you and the things I said." And she starts crying. I've been waiting for you to say that for 30 years.
Wow.
And it's just an emotional moment.
That's heavy.
Yeah. But I have good parents, and they're helping me out in their own way now. And I'm living my life, and maybe I'll find some way to bring money in, and maybe I won't, and we'll struggle. But it's people are struggling all over the world now, and I worry about practical things, and it's a worry. But sometimes I think to myself, you know what? Just look at it this way. You don't know what the future holds. Live in the moment. What we have today may not be what we have tomorrow. Eventually we're all going to be on the same plane. We're all going to be in the same boat. And I look at it. I can't obsess worrying what's going to happen. I'm going to live my life today and be happy today and raise my son today and love my wife today. And that's the attitude I try to take. Sometimes I actually believe it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have to convince myself. But no, I have good therapists. I have a therapist who I've been seeing now for about 10 years. And I have a psychopharmacologist that I've seen for a good 20 years, and a neurologist. And they're helping me out and giving me perspective. And I'm happier than I've ever been. And yeah, my only problem that I really see, and that's the one that really gets you, is the temper thing, the anger disorder. The anger disorder is a terrible, terrible thing, because I get frustrated and I get angry, and then I have to apologize. And I remember about 2 weeks ago, my mother was here with my wife, and my wife said something, and I took offense to it, which I shouldn't have. And I started saying things, And my mom called me out on it. She said, "You can't talk to her that way. You can't talk like that. Why are you talking like that? How could you say that?" And I just broke down in tears because I was so ashamed of myself. And I just went in my left the room, and I just cried. And I just, they understand. They
Yeah.
just because I mean, you can't, I can't blame people for getting frustrated with me, like I said.
Mm.
And when my wife and my mom took offense to the way I responded, they had every right to be angry at me. Even if they knew what it was. They knew what it was, but I still have a responsibility to try and stop that and control it. And I've been doing a lot better with that. I've been getting physical therapy now, and I get acupuncture. And the acupuncture is fantastic. The acupuncture sometimes reduces the tremors,
Hmm.
and it keeps my mood up. And I just have to be aware of myself and say, "Listen, your son's just being a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old. He's doing 7-year-old things. You can't get angry at him for it." And sometimes I'm successful and I let it go. And sometimes I go on a tirade and I yell and I apologize to him. And so far, he's understanding. That what scared me the most. What scares me the most is that someday he's going to get fed up and say, "Listen, Dad, you yell at me. I know you have this problem, but you yell at me. You scream at me. And I can't take it anymore." And I worry about that. And I don't think it's going to happen because my son is just very loyal to me and he loves me and he's special and he's wonderful and he's great. And I can't say enough good things about him. But
Yeah, well, I think the way
it,
you express all this stuff, I mean,
for me, for me, it's just that's the worst part is that I make when my Tourette's gets bad or when my anger disorder comes, I rage at the people who love me and the people I love, and that's really the worst part of it. More than the tremors and more than the head shaking or the twitches or the cursing. It's I wish I don't curse. I curse when I'm angry.
mm.
But all that's on the side. It's the anger disorder that's the worst for me because I'm hurting the people I love and
But
who love me.
But you talk about it so eloquently and you write about it eloquently. And, I really like the way that you think about and the way that you write about and explain what you go through. And I think
Thank you.
I think there's a unique ability in helping the people around you and people who maybe have situations that mirror yours elsewhere in the world. Help them understand and help them negotiate how to
Yeah,
deal
and
with family
I
and
publicized it on the groups, the Tourette groups.
yeah,
And my wife said, "You're doing it on the Tourette groups in the U.S. Why don't you do it all over the world?"
yeah,
So now I became a member of the Australia one. I became part of the UK one.
mm-hmm.
I became part of, I think, Canada. And I found all these other Tourette Association groups, Tourette support groups, and I'm forwarding my posts to them too.
Yeah, and I think that
So
echoes back home for you that the people around you do have the context, they do understand the context, and again, me not having met your son or your wife or your family, I can't help but feel that they, that your bigger fears are not going to come to
yeah,
pass
that's the only
because
thing the only thing I worry about is the temper that I rage against people who love me.
yeah,
I mean, that's heartbreaking, and I sometimes I admit it, and sometimes I get angry at myself for it, and sometimes I forgive myself, and sometimes I'm defiant about it. But I don't want to. I don't want to. I've never hit anyone. I've never become physical, but I do yell, and I do get angry, and I do get frustrated, and I say things that I shouldn't say, and that's the only thing that bothers me about the Tourette's is that I'm hurting the ones I love sometimes.
yeah, but at least you do have that gift of eloquence where you are able
Yeah.
to explain it, and it's not real. It's not and using the word real. It's not like it's coming from your heart when you're raging at somebody or getting angry at somebody. That there's there's something else going on.
Just because my son's not getting dressed fast enough.
Right.
Why are you wasting time, Jake? Come on.
Yeah.
I'm getting fed up, and I storm out of the room to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why is daddy getting angry at me? It's not fair. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way you do write about it, I have faith that you're going to find somebody to publish your book, because I mean it's really, really good stuff. And you know, I like slipping into context, even if I understand. I have Tourette's. You know, I know what you go through from that angle, but you're still a different person who has a different lens and a different angle on things.
Everybody has a different angle on it. Everybody has their own angle on it.
And it helps me to kind of, you know, expand my lens or improve how I look at myself or how I deal with myself by hearing other people talk about it and hearing your stories and reading your stories. I mean,
that's why I read up on it so much. I want to hear these people's stories because it helps me and it helps them.
Yeah.
It's symbiosis, I guess.
Okay, so I'll have links in the show notes to Jason's blog and his writing, including the piece about that Phillies player, if you're curious. No, it's not Jim Eisenreich, different era. In fact, I had positive experiences with Jim when I was a kid, so Jason's talking about somebody else. That's just my teaser. Go check out his writing. But if you're at your computer and you want to go ahead and type it in, the URL is Tourette's with an S, Tourette'sNewsWorld.com. Thanks to Jason Grant for being this episode. And thanks to you, the listener, for sharing these episodes so they get around. And thanks for the iTunes reviews. I want to read this one. This one comes from Rosie Kearney. So to excerpt her review, she says, "My eyes have been opened even more than they had been. I find myself nodding in agreement or gasping or even tearing up. Because of this podcast, I am confident that my son will continue to live a happy, well-adjusted life despite his TS and all of the comorbids that go along with it." Rosie, thank you. That's really, really cool. These iTunes reviews really help me out too. If you haven't rated the podcast, please take a minute to do so and keep the feedback coming because it's really going to help the direction that this podcast takes. I'm also meeting more people who live in my area who have Tourette's, which is a new thing for me, kind of having that community locally. But plenty of episodes ahead every Friday, so I'll see you back here next week, but keep the communication going in the meantime. The Twitter handle is @Tourette'sPod, and you can email me at tourettespodcast@gmail.com. All past episodes at tourettespodcast.libsyn.com. Libsyn is spelled Libsyn. Thanks for listening. This is Ben.